Okay. So what's your full name?
Rothacker Childs Smith, Jr.,
Okay. And what's your birth date?
6/10/23.
All right. So your story, as you were telling me earlier, you joined the Army. When did you join up or enlist in the Army?
I didn't, I got
You were
drafted.
drafted.
Right. And that was actually February 22, 1942.
Okay. And tell me, like, where you went to training and where you
Okay,
ended up, and just kind of walk me through your.
okay. I went to Battle Creek from Detroit, and there's where I got broken in, got my first shots, and we had to bundle up our civilian clothes and send them home because it was against the law to put on civilian clothes while you're in the service. And then on the fourth day, I went there on a Sunday morning, and on the fourth day that week, I think it was Thursday, we 16 of us were put on a train and sent to Camp Stewart, Georgia, which is 40-some miles from Savannah, Georgia, so it's way in Georgia. And that's when I went in a 10-cent store and saw two fountains. One said colored and one said white, so I figured the colored one had Kool-Aid in it because that's colored water. But anyway, I learned a whole lot about being in the South that I didn't really know before.
That was your first time.
My first time. And it first happened in Cincinnati. We were sitting comfortably in a nice coach, and in Cincinnati we had to get out of that coach and go sit in the coach right behind the engine, and usually they had no good heating system or whatever, and they had to leave the windows open, and those were steam-driven trains which put out a lot of smoke.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had on a white shirt, it was gray within 3 hours. And so that was the first segregation I ran into. And on down to Georgia. And when I got to Georgia, I was assigned to this camp, and the camp was laid out like a huge figure A, and all the headquarters and this and that, the other was at the A head of the camp, and then on each side, on one side was white troops and the other side were black troops. And I went to the PX, and the only flavors they had 147 pints of chocolate ice cream and 2 pints of vanilla for the 3 folk who worked in the store. And so we had to eat chocolate ice cream, and among other things. And I was a Seventh-day Adventist, so I got permission to go into the town, the city nearby, and go to church. But I had to catch a bus Saturday night because I promised to serve on Sunday when all the other troops wanted to be off. So I would serve on Sunday. And a couple of times the bus was full, and you had to sit on the back seat of a transportation bus, and if the bus was full, twice I rode in the back of one of those streamlined buses, like either Trailways or Greyhound, and it ended up like a bullet-shaped rear end. And I had to get back there, and they let the hood down and locked it, wound the doors all up, and I had to ride among the suitcases in the dark, going back to camp. I did that at least twice. And so being down south was kind of depressing at the time. And, but various things happened, and so I got sent to tech school in El Paso, Texas. And those were the days when it cost us, I think it was 1 cent to walk in a kind of a semi-tunnel under the river into Mexico. And guys would go over there and fill their mouths full of marijuana and then come back because they would get searched for everything else except what was in their mouth. And that's the way they smuggled marijuana. Of course, that had nothing to do with marijuana. So there were other things that happened in Savannah, and I got shipped back to camp, and there was an outfit that had been in the Army, a black outfit that had been in the Army about 3 years, and they were doing duty up in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, right next to Canada, and they had married, 3 or 4 of them had married French-Canadian girls. Then they shipped one company of them into our camp in Camp Stewart, Georgia. And the first or second time they went to get on the bus on Saturday afternoon, the man was killed. He died that day. His wife died the next day because they could not ride the same buses as the other people. And to see a black man married to a white woman was just against the laws and the rules and their thing, so they killed him.
Really?
And so that outfit figured out different ways. They'd been together for 2 or 3 years, and so they figured out different ways to get even. And one thing, the guys in my outfit were learning how to fire 50 caliber anti-aircraft machine guns and I think 40 millimeter twin barrel guns at planes. And they had to learn how to walk guard duty. So a lot of them had old-fashioned Springfield rifles with one shot, they were bolt action, and they each had 1 round, period. And so these guys from this ex-Canadian division would come and just tell the guy he wanted to borrow his rifle for a few minutes. So he'd lie in the bushes, and if a policeman, what do you call him?
MP?
MP would come by on a motorcycle or whatever. He'd just shoot him, he'd give the guy back his gun. And so when that happened for a while, and then they took over the main gate and they didn't let anybody in or out for about 3 days. So then they had a major kind of blackout or anti-riot or whatever. But I know a lieutenant in a Jeep with 2 or 3 guys with him, and then behind him was a 6x6 truck full of troops, and they came down the black road into the black sections of the camp, and the folk gathered in the street in front of him, and so he made a speech. And when he made the speech and nobody said anything, nobody moved, and then something happened and he got scared, and the guy said they just picked the front end of the Jeep and spun it around and left. And so then our end of camp was on siege for about 2 to 3 weeks. In the meantime, the War Department in Washington said that they found that black troops were too unfit to fire these complicated anti-aircraft guns. So they just stopped everything and divided us all up into quartermaster companies, including me. And I had been to Camp Atterbury. Two of us were sent there, and I was officially a surgical technician. I had worked in operating rooms and so forth, but all of us, because when I got shipped out, about 16 of us were put in a boxcar, and we, on our way out, we stopped in Birmingham, and in Montgomery or Savannah, Georgia, or any other southern town, when you got on the bus, there was a little card that fit into a slot on the back of each seat, and it said white on the front side and black on, it said colored on the back side. And so if there were no, if there were some empty seats behind the white seats, you could move the thing up one or so forth. And so it depends on what time of day and what part of the city. White may only have like the first 3 or 4 seats and all the rest was black. But in Birmingham, after you got to the middle, it had to stop. If everybody was standing up and half the front was empty. And so 2 of the guys who were in the boxcar with us, we had an 8-hour layover, and they asked permission to go into Birmingham and see some people they knew there. And they moved the thing 1 seat past the middle and got jailed and held our train up for 24 hours. And so that was the way things were. And finally, I got sent to a truck driving school, a transportation outfit, and everybody was a truck driver or an assistant. And we had white medics, white headquarters, white everything. And I stayed in that